Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Refracted Curvature, the Adam Meakin, Eli, who's off mute, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Nearly 2 times. I like it.
The globe is a lie.
Good morning, good morning.
Good afternoon.
Don't usually struggle with my own introduction. It's obviously very hot here today. That's my excuse. Anywho, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
No evidence. You can't see it. You can't experience it. No.
We had Dr. Phil call in last night in QE Live, or just put a question to chat. There was a picture up on screen of, the 2 black swan pictures that are there, and he was again saying, how do you explain the difference? And as we pointed out to him in the show, his explanation, his ball explanation, that's all that matters now. Yeah, his baller explanation was on that day he had 2 different R values. But I brought it up because it's this seed change, Nathan. Previously, I would have gone into detail, but this is the reality now. He's a ball denier, and he's denying that horizon is the leading edge of his ball. But the implications are, Phil, those 2 different pictures means you have a different R value on different days.
Exactly.
I thought you were going to give a different conclusion. The conclusion, you gave the preamble for the conclusion I thought you were going to give. The conclusion is he doesn't believe them. He doesn't believe them when they say that the horizon's Earth curve. He does not believe in the ball. That's the conclusion I thought you were going to make.
No, that's what I said. I said he's denying
started out with it.
the fundamental. He's denying his own fundamentals. He's not a ball believer.
Yeah, and regardless of what he comes up with...
The problem with that is?
Go on, Chocolate.
Eli.
My bad.
But I guess when I wake up, I sound like him a little bit.
You're huskier this morning.
That's what it is. He is a lot bassier.
My wife always confuses both of you.
I woke up like 2 hours ago, but I just realized that this is literally the first time I spoke. So it's like, here's the thing. If you're carrying out the scientific method, or you're doing a study, or you're writing a paper, or you're trying to express something to your mate, here's what you're going to need: the proper materials and the proper language to communicate and convey exactly what you need to convey. So here's the problem with me and these people that keep showing these 2 pictures. First, let's make clear that the horizon is 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, says them, according to a sphere with a radius of 3,959 miles. That being said, how do you test that claim? Okay, there's one way to do it. You can have something that you know the distance of, right? And so if you know the distance of that thing and you have the horizon calculator in hand, then you know whether or not the horizon is in front of or behind that thing, thus knowing it's either greater than or less than the distance that that physical object that you've measured to, like you know where it is in relation to the horizon, where the horizon is at least plus or minus in relation to that distance. So in that picture where they have the horizon and then the oil rigs, you can't use the same method for that because you have nothing to tell you where the horizon is, plus or minus.
Sure. But
Well, it's
that is
before the
true.
oil rigs,
Ollie,
but where before the oil
that,
rigs?
you're correct in the strictest measurement terms. However, the black swan is a Karl Popper analogy that we've utilised for a good reason, and that's that you only have to show the horizon to be beyond its geometric limitations to deny its physicality once. In the same way, if you claim all swans are white, you only need one black one to disprove that statement. Well, if you're going to claim the horizon is Earth curve, a physical obstruction to boats and buildings and skylines, then you've only got to show once that it isn't a hill getting in the way to disprove the claim that the horizon's a hill getting in the way. So when they go back to, well, on this day, the hill that's in the way is kind of in the way. Well, hills don't move. You've only got to show once that it's not a hill. It doesn't become a hill the following day when it's moved. Hills don't move. If it's a geometric limitation to your view, it's a geometric physical obstruction to your view called Earth curve. Back to the original point with Phil, if you want to show an alternative and explain the alternative, you don't believe the globe. That's the bottom line.
Heretic.
Yeah, exactly. Heresy. Rather than arguing with their heresy, point out that it's heresy. So you don't believe in the globe either. You've got different reasons to me as a flat earther, but ultimately, in our non-belief in the heliocentric claim of a physical Earth curve horizon, you don't believe it either. I don't care about your explanation for why you don't believe the horizon's a physical leading edge of a sphere at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, blocking boats and buildings. That's not interesting to me why you, as an individual without the Western world behind you, don't believe what the globe is claiming. All you're going to get from us from here on forward is, oh, so you don't believe it either. Like a concaver would. I don't know what we've labelled you anti-flat earthers, but you're not globe-believing normies. That's been the whole point of labelling you anti-flat earthers from the off. But now we're going to make it a lot more concise. What's that? It's refracted. So you don't believe the horizon's a physical Earth curve edge in geometric terms either, like claimed by the Earth curve calculators that are claiming to prove Earth curve. You don't believe it either. What's that? You want to tell me about your don't care. You don't believe the globe either. We used to say welcome.
Stone him! I mean, stone him.
We used to try and get them to understand how appreciably flat it is. I don't even feel the need to do that anymore because really, who was I trying to convince? Not them. Me. Now, I've got enough humility to admit that after the fact, but I wasn't trying to convince them. And I strongly believe after the fact that that's true of most of my brethren in this little community we call Flat Earth. You're not trying to convince the people who watch your videos. You're trying to convince yourself. Now that I have actually got concrete evidence of the Earth being measurably, observably, navigatably, demonstrably flat, I don't feel the need to convince anybody. So why try and take that anti-flat earther to the point where he's a glober so you can debunk him with your flat earth assertion, when you can just point out, like a concaver, you don't believe in the mainstream globe truth either then? All right, well, we're a lot more alike than you might like to care for, anti-flat earthers. Ruhif and Simon Dan and Katz, they're a lot more like us than Furtz meets the eye. They don't believe it either. That's the bottom line. That's why they've been subjugated, or whatever the word is, into a very similar little corner of the internet as us. Now, we were the poster childs of conspiracy back in 2015 and 16 until Congress got involved with YouTube. And then you replaced us in the little corner of the internet that we find ourselves in. You're here and we're here. And you're just as dangerous to the actual believers in the globe as we are. Why? Because you, Professor Phil, and you, Simon Dan, and you, Conspiracy Cats, don't believe in it either. So you're dangerous to the real globe believers who do just believe that the horizon's Earth curve and do just believe that Earth rotates beneath things to cause drift called Coriolis effect. So you don't believe those things. So you're a lot more like us than you'd care to like to believe, eh? Yeah, you're not globe believers, lads. You better get used to it.
They're trying to cover up the globe failures, basically. So they want to be believers, but they can't be because they already know its failures and have accounted for it, right?
Heretics.
Yeah, them accounting for it, Arwen, is them just not believing. Let's not try and get around what they've explained, understand it, and then debunk it to bring them in line with the globe so we can debunk that and prove it's flat. Let's just point out the obvious and disturbing for them nature of their reality they find themselves in. They don't believe in the globe.
No, you get it wrong. They believe so much in it that they're even willing to suspend reality in order to reinforce it.
This is not a buffet. The globe's got claims that it makes, and you either believe them or you don't.
No, but you can believe them beyond the natural reality, right?
So you could make up Bible verses that aren't in the Bible and still call yourself a true Bible believer? No, you can't. You either believe what's in the Bible or you don't. You either read it as it's written and interpret it as it's said, or you don't. Now, if you don't, you're just not a believer. If you make up your own interpretation to make it make sense to you, then you're just not a literalist. You're not a true believer. Well, the globers who are out there with the belief that they've got the Western world behind them in their globe belief haven't got the Western world behind them because they don't believe as they do.
But that's because they believe so much in it that they're willing to even double down beyond what the average person would find tolerable.
Still heresy.
It's still heresy. It doesn't matter if it's tolerable. Arwen, hold on. Let me have it out with Arwen. It doesn't matter if the word of the text is factually and demonstrably wrong. That isn't required for you, average normie, to have belief in it as a statement. It doesn't matter that it's factually inaccurate to claim we've got Coriolis effect, Earth turning beneath stuff to cause things that aren't attached to drift. Now, we understand that that's nonsense, and the anti-flat earthers understand that it's nonsense, so much so that you're saying they've got the passion to believe in the globe to explain away why it doesn't happen. And that might be true, but the belief in the globe doesn't require anything to be true about what it states. It isn't. It just requires you to believe in it. And Simon, Dan and Cats and Co. do not believe in it. That's all that's required. Not that it's true, that they believe in it, and they don't.
Right. Well, they shouldn't have ate from the tree of knowledge of flat Earth, but they did. And now they're excluded from that paradise, and they can only dream back about it and assert how they were okay taking that apple because it's wrong. That knowledge is fake.
Yes.
It's not really a flat Earth.
Exactly. I describe this formally as the cliff that you find yourself at the edge of when you come across the subject. Now, it doesn't matter if you're on the anti-flat Earth side or flat Earth side. When you get to that cliff, if you go over the edge, you fall down it. There's no other route. And when you get to the bottom and you dust yourself off, you either go, oh my God, I'm in hell. This can't be the case. Everything must be a lie if that's the case. No, it must still be a globe. Let's find reasons why. That's the metaphorical equivalent of trying to scramble back up the cliff. Whereas we go down and go, wow, check how clear the water is. Wow, there's little rapids down there. We can have a right laugh. This is ace. Oh, look at them up there. Man, they're right in the clouds at the top of the cliff, aren't they? And what's the top of the cliff the metaphor for? Just average normie walking around believing he's on a sphere. Yeah, the anti-flat earthers like cats, and Simon Dan, and Professor Phil, they've already fallen down the cliff, and their attempts to scramble back up are them trying to figure out a way of explaining something that they should just believe in. Now, they could just carry on believing. There's plenty of people who I know have come into this subject, found it a bit overwhelming, been a bit of an anti-flat earth for a while, and then just disappeared. Now, those people, I would hope, have just put it to the back of their mind at the very least and just tried to forget about it. In other words, carried on believing that there's drift and believing that the sky is a vacuum. Doesn't matter that it's not and it doesn't work. Just believe it and you'll be okay as a normie glober. Something that the anti-flat earthers don't seem to want to do. They want to square circles that can't be squared.
Are you saying, Nathan, that they've
morning,
fallen
guys.
off the globe edge?
Yeah, they've fallen off
They
the
thought that.
geometric horizon and are being obscured by it.
If I use, we're talking about their globe Bible. They are heretics because what they've done, they've gone off and instead of using the Bible now, they've got these things written on golden tablets that they're now using, which has some bearing to the previous religion, but it's completely different. It's fundamentally different. And that's where they're out there. They've gone off and written their own scripture. And to keep the ball, they're still believing in that. But again, they're heretics. They're denying the true tenets of their ball religion. They've had to make
Not-
their own.
That's the
They're
worst
all
kind of
religion
heresy, too.
Protestants.
Adam,
All
would that,
religion Protestants.
It was a Mormon dig, Arwin.
Adam,
Okay.
would that be known as non-canonical books?
I think it's possible. Like the heliocentric priests also changed the narrative in possible preparation for them now seeing that things of the previous model are being destroyed, like the R value of the Earth, for instance. I mean, if they realise that the R value has been debunked, what would you do to try and compensate that for in their world? You'd change the shape of the globe, wouldn't you? And they've already
Commit
plotted that
heresy.
in people's minds, haven't they? Like it's a pear shape and all this. And I think they plan these things out ahead, knowing what's coming. But obviously, you can't deny our elevation angle is obtained from a flat baseline. But I think that's what they're up to as well. Professional anti-flat earthers, the heliocentric priests at work.
Can I ask a quick question
one
of the
day.
panel?
One
Just,
day.
a quick
Sorry.
one. Did you have a point to make? Go ahead. Sorry, I'll ask afterwards.
Just very quick, just that they can't change the shape of their globe. They can't change anything because it has to match our perspective view of the sky. It has to match the drop and rise, angular drop and rise rate of Polaris. So they can't change that. It has to be exactly as it is, and it doesn't work as it is. So it's over.
I was going to ask some of the panel in the same way. I probably asked this a couple of years ago after the Black Swan, as in, does anybody concern themselves that there might be a sphere Earth at the end of this discussion or somewhere in their future? And my concern for that ended maybe February, March 2020 after the Black Swan had been released and really hashed out. Whereas now I'm going to ask a similar question, but about proving flat Earth. I've alluded to the idea that up until this point, I was more trying to convince myself than I was my audience or the opponent that the Earth is flat. Now, once I've reached the stone cold absolute realization there is no way around this, there's no way back, the models of the globe came from the flat Earth, all of those realizations, does anybody truly have any concern for convincing others since they found that out? Or am I alone in my sort of, I don't really care now? It's kind of, it's a fait accompli now. It doesn't really make any difference if you believe me or not.
If I may,
Go on.
if I may first, Adam, right? I'm worried about one thing, not that it might not turn out to be a flat Earth, but looking at the scope and the depth of how much fallacy is within the globe religion and how it played into this dynamic nature, this flexible nature of the mind of humans. And it worries me that it's persisted so well so long. So the worry is not about the physical reality, rather about the psychological nature of the predicament we're all in right now.
Well, but we're not in it. We're metaphorically at the bottom of the
We're
cliff.
among them.
Well, I'm just saying we seem to walk among them, but we don't. It doesn't work in my metaphor because they're at the top of a cliff and we're at the bottom of it. But equally, when I look back up in that metaphor to the people walking around with their head in the clouds at the top of the cliff, in a globe belief, they're not too concerned with it, are they, Arwin? Now, that lack of concern, that oblivious ignorance is bliss motif that they get to experience without even realising it, is what the anti-flat earthers really want back. That's what they want, to not care, to not be concerned anymore about this. That's what they truly want. And they can't have
Well, they
it.
can't.
My turn.
What is your question, Nathan? Sorry.
Do you really concern yourself with proving that it's flat now that we've got the elevation angle measurement and the stone cold proof that their model came from the flat Earth and the celestial sphere model in the first instance? Do you now concern yourself as much with proving it to others?
Oh,
No, I have a confidence about it. I just don't.
Nope.
I have. Yeah. It just is. It's like trying to prove a sweeping brush is a sweeping brush. You don't need to do it, if you know what I mean. You don't feel the need to do that. It is what it is. You know, you can't call it a shovel.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
that's the
before-
phraseology. Just let me rephrase it for the ease of the other panel members. Since this elevation angle argument and the derivation of sphere from flat plane, the is what it is mentality is now more prevalent than the I want to convince people it's flat mentality. Would you agree? Anybody else?
I would say your question, if I can go first, you got to break that question for me in two parts. One, the way you just said, I'm settled. I mean, there's no changing, there's no desire. But then there's that part B, which is if I have a friend or a loved one who's under the lie, I want to take time and share with them what I know. So if you do it in two parts, I could say I'm completely satisfied where I'm at. I'm not wavering either direction. I'm set. Now, how many globies do I know that I could help get set?
Okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it. The reason I ask is because I project my own feelings onto 10,000 other people and say that if I were in a position to not be 100% convinced, I just didn't realise it. And once you get your silver bullet, you go, I'm a lot less concerned about it now. And that's because I actually know and I didn't before. And I only realise that now. I kind of think, projected out onto others, there's probably a good chunk of people who are in this arena that can be appealed to in this regard, to say, maybe your concern isn't so much that you want to project this out to others. I'm not decrying your point, by the way, here, 10th. But maybe you just weren't 100% convinced in the same way I'm now confessing to not being 100% convinced. I just didn't even realise it. I didn't have a silver bullet.
You would have, let me add commentary to that. You're correct if you're a novice. You're correct if you don't know the arguments. You're correct because you don't put people who just go to boot camp in front of a fight. You have to get them beaten down in boot camp so they think differently. So yeah, if you're a brand new person coming to flat earth and you don't know the tricks, you're going to meet with some disappointments. You don't even know how big the question is. But if you're seasoned, have at it.
But that's the thing. Hold on. That's the thing. When you say arguments, right? Like this, the elevation angle, it's not an argument.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a seasoned person could only know that.
Yeah, that's another good way of putting it, though. That's another more eloquent way of putting it, even. Because up until now, I've known the flat earth arguments really well. But the elevation angle discussion about Earth being flat is not an argument for flat Earth that I know really well. It's a discussion point about the nature of reality that ipso facto lays out how the world is. So it stops being I've got to argue with it and I know the arguments really well, and turns into Earth is flat. That's how it's behaved, measured, navigated. That's how it is. What, you don't agree?
Right.
Oh, well.
The elevation angle is just a
disagree.
fundamental geometric argument, right?
Arguments are agree, disagree. right? That's belief. You have arguments over belief. What is just what is. You don't argue what is. That's delusion.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was
before I came,
sorry.
hold on. Can I go real quick? Before
Go
I
ahead.
discovered this show, I had a fear. There was always a little fear in the back of my mind. But it wasn't until I came here. I don't have that fear no more. Earth is flat, and that's a fact.
Right, and that's the sentiment I'm trying to get across, because that's something that where I can appeal to a wider audience that doesn't exist because we're shielded from it, or they're shielded from us more likely. We can appeal to that audience that is the extension of my dissemination of embarrassing truth that I didn't really know. And Neil's just re-expressed that. So that's the bit I'm trying to convey to the audience, which is to say that the regulars it doesn't apply to, but there's plenty of people that you'll know that are in the flat earth community that may have come by the flat earth debate and don't realise where we are in terms of the tip of the spear in that regard. You know, knowing that it's stopped being an argument and is an ipso facto statement of fact when it comes to the nature of reality that's being talked about rather than debated about here. Now, people will come in and talk about their beliefs in the nature of Earth, and that's always going to be the debate's subject. But our fascination in the opponent is, for me at least, shifted from debating something which I didn't necessarily know to be true, and knowing that my position doesn't have a debate attached to it, and an inquiry about why they don't believe in their belief. And with John's explanation in tow, you've got, well, agree, disagree is all about globe Earth. Could it work like this according to you? Well, that doesn't matter. The globe says it does work like this. Whether or not it does is irrelevant completely. Just believe that it does. That's all that's required. And if you don't, I'm intrigued in people like cats now. They hold it more. Maybe I'll start watching them a bit, because it's a little bit more fascinating how these conspiratards that don't believe in the mainstream rhetoric behave and convince themselves that they do. I mean, that's psychologically interesting. The fact that I know differently to what they're arguing for is also irrelevant. I'm confident in what I now know. But I also see people who claim to have a belief but spend a lot of their time arguing against their own belief that they obviously don't hold. So that's intriguing, wouldn't we all agree?
Yeah. Have a stab at it, Nathan, as well. I'd be with you. I think in the past, I would say there was a point where I knew everything I was being told about the ball was false. I could demonstrate it was a lie. And you see on the Globe Lie tour, and they changed that because lots of flat earthers back then had a trouble with making the positive claim. And I think it was Roxy and Jason, formed it like that. So when we went on the European tour, it was the Globe Lie. It was an easier thing to demonstrate to people. And I think back then, even in myself, I would have accepted that it could have been a ball, but that all the things that I was given as to why it was a ball were not valid. But I still couldn't say to myself 100%. I think since the Black Swan and celestial navigation, I do stand there with a much firmer surety in myself. I can't anything. I know balls to bone, if you know what I mean, that it is flat. Other than that, I've got no Scooby Doo. And do I need to validate it anywhere? No. And I don't think I was doing that when I went before, because I'm going to go again. If you look at what's on screen, there's one coming up next month. So I'm going to try and make a few dates there. And it's a little bit like 10th. Why am I going? It's not for my own affirmation anymore. It is to share that knowledge. And if we can start a few other people on that journey, brilliant. Will I be more confident there now? Yeah. Was I confident enough last time? Yeah. But that would be my perspective on it. But just to give a shout out. So that's from Monday the 11th of July to Friday the 22nd, tour in the UK for Plymouth, Bath, Cardiff, Gloucester, Birmingham, Cambridge, Norwich, the lovely city of Nottingham, Hull, Leeds, and then Preston.
A very, very honest assessment there. Then we all went on that same journey, and we are where we are now. So formidable.
I would have to be a little bit different. I accepted it was flat in 2015 immediately because of my past experiences. I just accepted it was flat. It was just a case of getting the arguments correct and finding my way through the weeds of heliocentrism. Now, I'm not trying to be a special fella or anything like that. That's just the way it was. It's like, no, it can't be a globe. And it made me laugh when our opposition, like I was laughing at our pathetic attempts to try and show us curvature back in 2015. You know, so I didn't have all the arguments down. I didn't know all the heliocentric information, but it didn't matter. I had a confidence in it back then from immediately from watching that Eric Debay video. I just had a confidence in it because that's why I started laughing. And did I make mistakes in the past 7 years trying to tell people close to me that it was flat and different things? I did, yeah, but now I don't care. It's like if people want to come to me with it, I'll lay out the facts. If they don't accept them, it's up to them. I don't care.
Well, that's the journey, Brian.
Just to finish, what the difference between them and us, and I was thinking this the past few days, is they've got math and we've got measurement. There is no, it's like we hold the trump card every day. Sorry, Ken, go on.
No, I'm saying that's what I meant by the journey. The journey wasn't for me to believe or for anyone that I'm speaking for to eventually believe. No, we knew it was flat. The journey was getting used to the arguments and knowing how to do it in the public forum. That was the journey.
Gas pressure without a container. Once I heard that, I mean, that was like eye-opening.
Yeah, once I realized the horizon's not physical sphere edge, that was that. I didn't need to get to the elevation angle or anything like that. As soon as I realized way back that the horizon's just an apparent location, an optical phenomena, that was that. Because if it's a physical ball, that whatever that is, that horizon, that should not be moving back and forth. And then and what was it? You said, Brian? They have math, we have measurement, right? You know what else they got?
Yeah.
Reasons. All I've heard for the past 7 years are reasons why the very claims that their side makes don't actually work. And that's what these guys have spent 7 years doing with us, telling us all the reasons why the things that they're supposed to believe in don't work out. And we're supposed to just accept that.
Heresy.
Nah, I'm good.
Exactly.
They can keep that shit.
Heresy.
What is an elevation angle measurement? I don't play word games.
Yeah.
Cutting their legs right out from them.
But
that's what it is.
The one that stuck out to me so far is Brian's, which is to say that I completely agree with him, but he's almost trying to reposition my sentiment with a different example, which it isn't. Because I'm identical in terms of my description, but to compare without knocking you, if I go back to the Isle of Man and look at the discussions that we had then, I know it's flat. You can hear it in my voice. There's no hint that I'm lying to my audience when I'm arguing that position. However, I'm arguing it from a much higher level of ignorance then, obviously it's a long time ago, than now. And that position of ignorance didn't mean I didn't believe it was flat any less, or, as you put it, know it was flat, based on my experience as a rep and the justification I've given until now of going to the back of the plane and seeing the flat plane below me and all those other things I'd considered before finding the subject out, and instantly knowing it was flat. But I still progressed on a journey that ultimately suggests I wanted more. I was dissatisfied with what I had, otherwise I'd have just gone on with life, wouldn't I? Instead, I embarked on a journey to find more. Now, when you go back in retrospect and look at something like the Isle of Man discussion, you go, you're arguing within a paradigm that you've lost every day you step into the discussion. Every day you're talking about a calculator that automatically begs the question of your opponent's position. And you didn't even realise that you'd lost every day you had the debate. Nathan Oakley had lost every day. You watch any show from 50 to 200 when we're talking about the Isle of Man, every single one I'd lost the moment I opened up the doors. Why? Because we argued within a framework of a question that was being begged in favour of the sphere. We just didn't know it. So even though I was fighting a losing battle, I still believed it. I just didn't have what I needed to sit back in confidence and not really care, because I automatically knew what was being, as you put it, measured of the Earth. I didn't know all that. I had a vague contemplation of it, but that's about all. I needed more to be confident, and argued from a position that I'm appealing to my audience to know as much as I do in my arrogance, when really I was ignorant.
You don't realise that, though, do you? Until you've got the better argument. So, like you say, you believe just as much back then.
Just cut in the paradigm.
But could you have nailed it down and put your kids' lives on it? No, not maybe. That's what I'm saying. I was being honest. If something else came, was there something else? And that's probably what we were searching for. And when we got to the Black Swan and that, it is the final nail, because it just pulls we talk about, Neil mentioned gas pressure. Well, lovely, but that doesn't define the shape, does it, to me? It shows me one thing, that again, that their rhetoric was nonsense in that bit of the claim. But did I have this unifying thing that pulled it together? And I don't think, until we got the Black Swan and the sextant, you see, it's when you put those two together with everything else you'd learned that you now know. You have proof, evidence.
Yeah, in terms of a top three, gas pressure without a container has gone from number 1 in 2018 to number 2 in 2020 to number 3 in 2023. So it's moved down in position. It doesn't mean it's not a great song. It just means that there's better, more popular songs available. And the more popular songs are the Black Swan and the elevation angle argument. Because at number 1, the globe was made by using measurements from a flat plane.
The thing I'd say, Nathan, the final bit of what you're saying, am I arsed anymore? It's not so much that. It's when you come to this reality, there is other conclusions you have to draw, right? That of a creator. And I think that's what probably realigns your motivations and where you want to expend your energies. Do I need a million more proofs? No. Are there other things I want to find out as a consequence of this route I'm on? Yeah. And I think that's why I still want to share and do things like that with Flat Earth. But in terms of where I invest my energy and time in terms of my personal reading and research, it's not in Flat Earth stuff anymore.
Fair enough. Are you new, Johnny B? Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, maybe I will ask about something, but I will also what you have forgot, or maybe you have to clarify better. I can say Coriolis, I can say sextant, and I can say also the path of the sun. If we start with the Coriolis, people have to understand what is an inertia frame and what is a non-inertia frame. That is, in non-inertia frame is the Earth. If you're standing on the Earth that is rotating, if it is rotating, the rotating frame. People have to know that. They don't know if it's an inertia frame or it's a non-inertia frame. Do you understand?
Oh, absolutely. It took me ages to understand it. I had to have it broken down multiple times by Quantum Eraser, and I still didn't understand it. And then Paula, Bible literalist now in our chat as Level Up, was kind enough to go through it with me and explain it in language that I understood, that I just couldn't get, because it didn't make any sense, right? Non-inertial being the spinning reference frame? What? But it's spinning, it's moving. How can it be non-inertial? Well, it's non-inertial because you're part of it. So you, if you're looking at your feet and the floorboards of a turning roundabout, the floorboards, the roundabout, they're all as one. And the reason it's described that way is because the effect that's going to be described is an illusionary effect. But it is apparent. In other words, you can see it happening. So therefore, to describe something that isn't really happening in a way that describes it as actually being apparent, you can see it, you must have you be described as not moving. In other words, from your vantage point, if you look at the floorboards on the roundabout, they're not moving. You're not moving. You're non-inertial. Well, you're on a non-inertial, from your vantage point not moving, turning, overall the reference frame is rotating, reference frame. To see a ball tossed over the top of the roundabout in the inertial reference frame, because that's the frame of reference that's going to have the inertial effect of it curving. Shh, it isn't really curving, it's moving straight. But you're seeing it apparently curves. So because you can see that effect of it curving, you have to describe that as an inertial effect. But it isn't really happening. The ball's going over the roundabout in a straight fashion. So to describe it as you see it, and you see it curving when tossed straight, you have a non-inertial turning reference frame, which you are a part of, being the reference frame that the curved path is described from. There you go, that's quite detailed. Less concise than usual, but
short.
Okay. Hang on. That's you are part of. That is a nickel board for it. You are non-inertial frame. That's you are part of, right?
Yes.
There you have it. Then that is the rotating frame. If you are part of it.
Yeah.
So
if you're on the roundabout, you're part of the roundabout turning.
Yeah, and everything in the sky. If you think of the sky, and if you're on rotating Earth, we are not on a rotating Earth, but I say if, then everything in the sky is the inertial reference frame.
Correct. If it's not attached to the rotating reference frame, it's in the inertial reference frame.
Yeah, there we have it. If you are part of it, then it's non-inertial. Okay, then we talk about if we talk about the sextant, that people have to understand what the circular equal altitude is and what they can tell you. What is circular equal altitude?
Flat. Two-dimensional.
Yeah.
Circles are two-dimensional.
It's two-dimensional. It's like you're triangulate, but you are not triangulating. You are coordinate. Coordinate and triangulate is not maybe the same thing, but can you clarify for the audience the difference?
Between triangulating, i.e. finding three locations that coincide at a single point, and what was the other one you wanted to compare it to?
Yeah, okay. You know, if you aim to the star it can be the moon, it can be the star, it can be the sun. Okay, you can the best thing is if you want to make 3 points, that is circle of equal altitude to the stars, and you get angle to 3 stars, and from the stars you are making circular equal altitude. Then you are getting area of thousands of miles that is proven flat, right?
Yes.
But it's not real triangulation. It is more about angle, and then you can make it true because you're using the almanac to get the true distance from the landmark and so on and so on. And therefrom, you can get circle of equal altitude. That, in my mind, will tell me the area that you are measuring is absolutely flat. It cannot be an equal altitude. It is not flat, right?
Correct. You can't draw a two-dimensional circle or 3 two-dimensional circles that cross at a single point if you're on a curved surface. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Therefore, I want you on the flat debate pointed out the circle of equal altitude is very, very strong point. Very, very strong point.
Oh, we do regularly.
Then I will go. Okay. Then I will go to the path of the sun, like we understand it. because the people don't understand if they are in somewhere in the South America and if you're everywhere you're on the earth, you're not seeing you cannot see the effect that's happening around the North Pole, like I have done. And in the summertime, you can see the path of the sun is a circle over your head above. That is a very, very strong point, and it's self-evidence. But so many people that in the flat earth community, or what you want to call it, don't understand that because they have never been there. I think it's a very strong point also, because you can see the path of the sun go in a circle above your head. That's proof that the Earth is going in a circle, and you can take time lapse of it. What do you say about that?
Well, it was one of the first things I did. So I set up a whole bunch of people. Adam was there, along with a few other people, including Arwin, and I can't remember if Brian was there or not. And we got everyone that we could to track the sun's movement in real time. So film it at sunrise, sunset, and when it was at solar zenith, or as close to as they could get. And as you say, getting a good handle on seeing the sun do the motion in the north around your position along the horizon, low to the horizon, versus rising in the east, setting in the west, and going across you, across the top of your position, meeting at your zenith, and then going down towards the other horizon. Those two things are very, very different. But positionally, if you mark where the sun is actually over, i.e. where it's directly above at a given time, you can see that the motion tracks up with how you would position yourself with the sun itself if you timed it at different points in the day. Because you can triangulate your position with the sun, you just can't do it once. You've got to have more than one thing, obviously, to get multiple positions from. So you just have to wait. But you can still log where it was above at a given time.
Exactly. We are not pointing or talking about that so much. It's real evidence that we have, and we have to point out that it's so obvious for me. And if you think about it, that how we see the sun and everything we see in the heaven body, it's for me it's like a parent vision. It's absolutely close, but the power of it is behind. But no proof for it. It's just like I understand it.
Sounds like you got a very good handle on it. Quick shout out to Jado. He says, Akumu virus is the biggest closet flat earther I've ever seen. Maybe. I think these people are just in denial about what the globe actually claims, because a lot of them don't believe it.
Heretics.
Yeah, heretics.
He's the biggest heretic.
So, Nathan, do you realize what just happened? This fine gentleman came on after listening to your show for a while, has 3 very solid points to make with anybody about the nature of Earth, and it's thanks to your show. And
he didn't credit the show. Yes, twice you did that. He didn't actually credit the show with that information being in his arsenal.
No, he did. He said he listened to your show.
Yeah. Oh, I must have tuned that bit out through modesty. My bad.
Well, this
the first thing.
This is why we do what we do.
Very good. In that case, great. Yes. Result. Very pleased to hear it. Also, shout out to Sleeping Warrior, who says, Akumu virus is the biggest closet flat earther I have ever seen. Okay. Thank you very much for the super chats. Sleeping Warrior and Jado.
Keep hanging in there, Kuma.
Nathan, Tony's, with regards to your question earlier, Tony's probably one of the ones that was early on, gave the ballers, give me some evidence and I'll change it, like with these Southern Stars. I'd like to hear his response. Where he's at now.
You're joking, I don't. I immediately, my skin starts to crawl. Because what he actually did was allow them to beg the question. He'd say, give me evidence of the ball. And they go, well, if the Earth's a ball, then blah, 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 blah. And I go, don't let them beg the question. They go, no, they're going to get somewhere with this. Got to let them beg the question a little bit. He'd drive me up the wall.
No, he drive me up the wall when he would say it might be a bigger ball.
the point is, I wonder how his mindset is now, because we were very different way in approaching it. Like I said, we'd argue for hours within their curve calculator and not know that was daft. Do you know what I mean? So there we go.
Hey, Sleepy Mario.
Yo, I heard my name and I didn't have a link, so shout out to 10th for passing me a link. Adam, you failed on your quest for today's link.
Oh, I did.
You're not in Master B?
No, I left Master B ages ago.
Oh, right, okay.
So no, I didn't get a link, but what did you say you wanted to know my opinion on, Adam? Which point?
Well, Nathan, summarise your question again, because
it's fairly long-winded. So prior to Black Swan and Elevation Angle, I confessed that while I knew the arguments well, I didn't really know Earth was flat. So therefore, I kept on my quest to find things that proved it, were a silver bullet, whatever analogy you want to use. And I asked the panel, since then, do you, like me, feel similarly that you care a little bit less about proving it to others? Because in my case, at least, I was just trying to prove it to myself at a higher standard. So since the two arguments, Black Swan and Elevation Argument, do you feel more confident, less confident? What's your opinion?
See, I don't even like the word flat, as in flat Earth, because I accept that mountains and valleys exist, so local topography means that it can't be flat. That argument is logically sound, it is valid, and we shouldn't use the phrase flat Earth because it isn't flat. But what we can use, then the question becomes, what would be the adjective that we would then use as a short, snappy phrase to contrast ourselves from the heliocentric person, right? We need a word to describe it that's not too long-winded. So I accept that on superficial perception, flat Earth is a perfectly acceptable explanation. But then you get idiots in chat that go, oh, well, let's apply the definition. I like the definitions. And you get people in chat that then say things like, well, flat means without any relief to it, right? And it does. But notice when you get somebody that points out that definition to try and use it against you, when you then point out their definitions and they run away from their definitions, the hypocrisy then becomes stark. So then I like to point out the hypocrisy of the claim. But back to the original question, how do I perceive it? I don't like the phrase flat Earth because it's a stereotype as well as a pigeonhole, as well as inaccurate. It's not an accurate way of describing the world we live in.
We'll get to that.
It is.
We'll get to that.
But
just let him go. We'll get to that.
I prefer the descriptive word of formless or without shape, because one, it allows you to invoke the Bible, which is the antithesis of their model, because they hate the Bible. So I do it just to spit petrol on the fire. But also, without shape or formless is a better word to use to describe the contours of the land that we have, that are mountains and valleys. So I accept that we are without shape, but I don't like the phrase flat. So I don't really like the word flat Earth.
Yeah, but he goes on to form the
Hold on.
I want to
might have more.
respond.
Hello. You might have a bit more. Hello. Go ahead, Sleepy Mario, or was that it?
No, I was just addressing the point that I don't really like the phrase flat Earth because we do have mountains, and I think the better word is.
We got that.
Formless.
Is there anything else though?
Yeah. No, that's it.
Okay. Just one quick question, and then Arwin, and then Neil. So, would you accept that as an aspect, Earth is flat?
As a loosely held, it is flat.
As an aspect of Earth's topography overall.
Yeah, but a loose aspect, because like if someone says to me, is it really flat though? And I'll say no, because I do accept mountains. And they say, but then it's not flat, then is it?
Sure. But a mountain isn't the entirety of the Earth, is it? So I'm asking, as an aspect, if you included all of the known land that we had, and you had to draw it out on a graph or a diagram, would you agree that the aspect that you would plot it on would have to be flat?
Yeah.
Earth is flat. So Earth is flat, Anthony. There is no non-justification. It's a perfectly acceptable statement. It's an aspect of the world that presents itself.
You can't use the word flat because flat means without relief in this context, and there is relief.
And overall,
That's not what it's about.
Yeah. And as an aspect, overall, There is no relief overall. It is flat as an aspect. That is a factually accurate statement. Would you not agree?
It's more like a contradiction in terms, in my opinion.
No, it isn't.
No, but it isn't.
No, it isn't.
I want to go after Arwin and Neil.
No, hold on.
Okay.
No,
Arwin, I'm talking. Let's just get control.
No.
I'll pass it to you, Arwin. So,
Thank you,
Arwin,
right?
and then we won't let me take control. Thank you, Arwin. I'm trying to hand
sorry.
over to you. If you could shut up long enough, I'll hand the mic to you. Yes, Arwin, then Neil. Go ahead, Arwin.
Right. So flat Earth is not about the surface structure. It is about the overall geometry from a vantage point of assuming a shape about the overall Earth, right? Because of the dichotomy that we find ourselves in versus a ball, which is a very specific geometry, right? So the flat is basically a geometric aspect. It's very specifically about the geometry, not about the surface and what it looks like, right? It's about the canvas, not about how thick are the layers of paint over here on this canvas versus over there. That's not what it's about. So every time a baller brings that up, it's a red herring.
I think Arwin put that beautifully. Absolutely. When you juxtapose the false dichotomy we find ourselves in, that would be ball Earth versus what they call, and Anthony doesn't like, in quotes, flat Earth. The overall comparative aspect versus the other is flat. And I've got no issue saying that. Neil, go ahead. Then who is this? Then John.
I just wanted to address the biblical term without form and void. It was, but then he went on to create, and he created a flat Earth with mountains, valleys, rivers, and oceans.
Okay. Can I make my point?
Whatever. Thank you, Neil. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. Yeah. If you were going to build on a table, the table would be your baseline. It would be your, basically, once you made sure it was horizontal, it would be your horizontal baseline. So then whatever you build, the overall aspect of that will be flat. Now, if we take whatever we built on that table off and we put a microscope on that table, will that table be flat? No, it will have undulations on that table, because when we see into the smaller parts of the table, we'll see undulations and hills and valleys within that table. But when we look at that table from outside of that, it will look flat. The same way as from an airplane, the horizon looks flat, because all these mountains and everything end up so small in angular size that they just end up being part of a horizontal line. So as a description of the whole of the Earth, flat is the only way you could describe it.
Exactly.
Or horizontal.
Exactly. If you're gonna make a comparison to how the topology lies, you will be comparing it to the flat aspect, and that is how it's done. So if you go to Google Earth, I think you have to have the Pro version to do this, you can draw out an elevation profile where you can draw a line from one end of the known Earth to the other. And the graph it brings up might include the Mariana Trench in it and show it dipping down, but the overall graph that it sits on from one end to the other has no relief. There's only comparative relief within that overall flat aspect that the Earth is. I also do like what Anthony said about it not having form, because that ties quite beautifully. I had a little goosebump moment when he said it, and he was like, well, I like it because it triggers them because it's biblical. And I was like, well, that isn't why it's giving me goosebumps, because it's so factually accurate. Without form. The amount of times I've said to some idiot that's asked me what shape Earth is, flat's not a shape, it's an aspect. So to juxtapose it with your sphere belief is ludicrous. So to say without form is beautiful. I love that. And it's biblical as well.
I just like it because I just like it really because it is like the biblical description of it, but just by citing that one word, I can imagine the likes of Gem Panda exploding at the other end of the mic. They'd be on mute when they did it, but they would go, "What's the Bible?" Like instantly, it'd be like a Victor Meldrew moment, and that for me is really satisfying. So I just like it for that reason.
Hold on.
You do realize, though, that every time you say that, you are effectively denying creation, right? Because it's a pre-God arrival statement.
Thank you.
I don't care what it's denying. I just like the word.
Yeah, but you're missing something here. Any baller who's pulling that card on us, right? That originally started with Bev saying this. Now the ballers are trying to say it to us. What they're forgetting about is those same mountains and valleys are supposed to be on their globe. So that means they don't have a sphere if we don't have a flat. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, Arwin
nonsense.
said that was
So they
Arwin's
have a-
point. When you hold up their false dichotomy of flat Earth versus globe Earth in their stereotyping fallacy of what they say flat Earth is, and they ask us what shape it is, their mind is looking for the answer of pizza pie with boat falling over the edge of it, rising up at 9.8 meters per second, a la the Flat Earth Society. That's the ideal answer in that false dichotomy. Well, by comparison, Arwin's saying you can only take that as read. You want a false dichotomy of the overall sphere Earth encompassing every bit of known land that we know versus what I say the overall quote-unquote shape of the Earth is. Well, pound for pound, it's flat. And if you want to give an actual comparison where somebody's verbalised that, what you've just said, Brian, Neil deGrasse Tyson does it when people take him out of context talking about the pear-shaped Earth. He does describe it mathematically as being a little bit chubbier at the bottom. He then goes on to say that if it was scaled down to the size of a bowling ball and you ran your hands over it, it would be perfectly smooth. You wouldn't feel any of the mountains, like you described with the table and the undulations in it if you got down to the microscopic level. Well, if you scaled the claim to be sphere Earth, heliocentric ball Earth world down to the shape and size of a bowling ball, you wouldn't feel any mountains. You wouldn't feel the Mariana Trench. You wouldn't feel anything. It would be perfectly smooth. Well, likewise, when you take that presumed to be spherical surface and flatten it out, overall, as an aspect on a graph depicted in Google Earth, aka elevation profile, it's perfectly flat when you look at it as an overall. But then when you zoom in, you've got topology. Yeah, wow. By scale, it's a completely smooth bowling ball on a globe Earth. By comparison, it's a completely smooth surface on a flat plane if you look at it, as Arwin said, from a distance. But that's the only way you can stack up their false dichotomy and give them an answer. You want to know what shape it is. Flat's not a shape, but if you want it in that false dichotomy, it's flat. Overall, it's flat.
Well, there's another thing
Wouldn't
too.
the aspect
'cause I
rather
don't
be
think
level?
Anthony-
Wouldn't
Hold on,
it rather be
John
accurate
first.
to say level? Because flat in the definition is that no part is higher or lower than another. And if we have undulations, then we have parts which are higher or lower than the others. And I think that's what
I agree.
Anthony's point was.
I agree. And likewise, you can juxtapose that by saying sphere. Well, a sphere would mean that it's perfectly not got any flat surface and blah, blah, blah. You can make the same, what's the word? It's a red herring rebuttal.
Right.
Because by comparison,
Well,
their sphere Earth's perfectly smooth. So you're saying that the sphere to be called a sphere has to be perfectly smooth. It's an unreasonable rebuttal when you're comparing the two in false dichotomy, like Arwin so eloquently stacked them up.
Well, it's also a qualification versus quantification problem, because when you quantify how unlevel or unflat it's going to be by applying topology, it'll be to a baseline that is flat.
Exactly.
It's pretty eloquent.
Exactly.
So
The
the
line on the
qualification-
diagram in the elevation profile is perfectly flat. So you're going to be comparing those relief or elevation differences to an overall flat graph. That's how you
You
compare
wouldn't
it.
call the base of a graph
elevation
flat.
angles.
You'd call it level.
Or
You'd say
level.
the base of the graph is level.
That level of semantics, fine. I'm more than happy to concede on. Fine, level.
Yeah, elevation angles, though, Nathan. That's all it is. The point of the elevation angles, the point of if you're using the marine sextant, the whole point of it is that you are describing it as the baseline of your right angle triangle being the surface of the water and Earth, the horizontal baseline of Earth underneath you. You're pre-assuming that the Earth has a horizontal baseline for hundreds and thousands of miles. So as an aspect, as a description, you couldn't describe it in any other way but flat or horizontal.
Or level. Exactly. Earth is measurably and navigatably flat. That's how it's measured. So if you want to get semantic about the actual word, I don't mind. I don't care. It's just not falling away at 8 inches per mile squared and spherical. But with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat. I think there was a couple of super chats that actually floated by that I didn't catch, so let's see if I can catch those now. Let's bring up the super chats again. Maybe I can find them in time during this outro and still seem slick. Probably not. Shout out to... Well, scroll, the wheel's not going quick enough. Yes, there we go. Chronicles of the Unconvinced, who says, Akumu is the biggest closet flat earther I've ever seen. All right. Okay, well, you've third super chat in a row that's disclaiming that Akumu virus is a closet flat earther. Really appreciate the support, Chronicles of the Unconvinced. Also, another shout out to Jardot, who says, I miss Ranty. Where is he? The second biggest closet flat earther after Akumu virus. Okay, there's a lot of love for Akumu virus seems to be going on in the chat. But nevertheless, I really appreciate all the support. All of you did smash the super chat. Much love to you all. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!